G'day, legends. Welcome back to Roadside, presented by Zwift. We are back again for an extra episode. There's just too much going on in the cycling world as we head towards the Tour de France, so we've got to keep the ball rolling. Tommy, lots is happening. Dauphine's just wrapped up. The Tour of Swiss men's is on. Tour of Swiss women's has just finished up. There are a whole host of stinking UCI rules we've got to get through, and there are some new transfer rumours as well that we'll be running through later in the pod, mate. But first, big week for us, mate, wasn't it? Big week the last few days. We've had, had a lot going on, haven't we?
Yeah, we certainly have, mate. In the world of cycling, that sort of carries on, and then in our own world, what have we had? We had you were on the tools for the Pedal Mafia Zwift party, the first of three stops, and then you're about to go to the Sydney stop, and then I'm going to the Melbourne one. So that's going to be exciting, isn't it, mate? But that Friday night was sensational. Zwift, they did a bang-up job of just putting it on. The racing was so good.
Yeah, and for those listening, we had a racing night at a huge studio with Pedal Mafia and with Zwift here in WA, and none of the other events. So Sydney, Rafa Sydney, Matt Melbourne, the last year that we've run these events, no one's ever done racing, but Pedal Mafia wanted to do racing. So we had like this jumbo screen. We had all the riders up on the stage. We had a knockout, like 4v4 knockout racing, full gas for 8 minutes. And they were sort of, first three would go through the next round until we had champions. It was just amazing. The DJ was there. People were frothing. There was chanting. It was wild, mate. And we've got Sydney coming up tomorrow. I'll go to Sydney, and then you're going to Melbourne on Thursday to do that with Matilda. So, it's going to be so good, mate. So good.
Yeah, it certainly was, mate. It was good. You were on the tools, though. It was funny, hey, at the obviously not being there, working alongside you, taking it from a different angle, where the Eskies were at the back of the room. I was just keeping an eye on, how full they were and if they were becoming a little bit too low.
They ran out of water. Remember that? My voice was cooking, mate. I was dying for water. I think they had to go to Coles to get more water. They ran out of beers and water. It was hectic. The shelters, mate, they were down the toilet. There was that many. And what about the Sundowner, mate? We had the Tour de France Sundowner where we present the Tour de France route. We go through the contenders. It's this big soiree at the Allianz Francaise, which we talked about last week. And we rolled in there at 5 o'clock just to get prepared and check our systems for the night, mate. And what were we greeted with?
We were greeted with open arms, open arms of the organisers. Thomas Feldstein, he's the man who runs the joint, and it's great to see you. Did you get my email? Email about what exactly? emceeing the entire event. Nah, no one received it. It must have been in the post, this email. It was pretty funny. Anyway, we were flying by the seat of our pants, weren't we?
And we were just supposed to do little 15-minute spots, like two 15-minute segments, couple of interviews, and get out of there over this 3-hour night. But no. Tom R said, hey, we actually want you to, we emailed you, you've got to do the whole thing. A big 3-hour night. We were trying to pronounce wines and French food that was being handed out. It was so funny.
And the worst thing about it is everyone from the cultural learning school, and everyone, they're all saying you should take lessons, and we're saying yes, we should. We absolutely should. We don't exactly have the French pronunciation down pat like the glorious voice that Matthew Keenan can roll it off. But mate, we picked up a few things. We handled it. I thought we grabbed it. At least I was able to get by. I got by with the wines. I don't know about you, mate.
Well, I didn't get to try any of the wines, but it doesn't matter. The invoice will still be sent. A big episode coming up. I must also make a mention. We've got the new branding out and more to come as well. So I hope everyone likes the new Roadside look. Of course, Annie Kidd, the designer, as always, for all of our branding. So I hope you guys like that. And now all the socials have all moved across to Roadside Cycling Podcast. So if you want to find us on Instagram, it's Roadside Cycling Podcast, and on all the pod players on YouTube. That's the lot. So make sure you follow us on all of those platforms. But with that, big thanks to Zwift. Heaps of events coming up this week. Let's get into this pod. Tommy, this is Roadside, presented by Zwift. So, Tommy, the FE Sports Roadside News. Let's get into a big news board here. We've got the UCI rules and regulations. But just before we do, must remind everyone our Tour de France Lift Out will be our Tour de France show during the great race that starts on 5th of July. We'll be doing episodes twice a week and, of course, a preview of the race and a review of the race as well. So make sure you do follow us along so we'll keep you up to date with what's happening at the Tour. But first, some results, Tommy.
Yeah, there's been a fair few results, hasn't there? Obviously, we had the Criterium de Dauphine over the weekend. Your man, Pogacar, he just showed he's a class above everyone, isn't he? Yes, put the finger down. Jonas Vingegaard, my boy, he was in second. A little bit of room to improve there. But the big ride, I thought, for the weekend was Florian Lipovitz. He was third. Overall, the German, great ride for the man from Red Bull. And across at the Tour of Swiss Femme, we had Marlon Russa, who you've written has slapped away Vollering and Kasia Doma. Some big results, some big names at both the men's and the women's racings.
Yeah, there was. It was really good. The Dauphine for here in Perth was actually really quite good to watch because it was finishing up at about 10:30 p.m. So that was really, really nice. You could actually turn on the stage and not sort of have to stay up too late. But we are going to talk about the Criterium de Dauphine later in this pod after the news. But yeah, some interesting results there. Marlon Russa getting the victory over Vollering, I think it's very interesting. And perhaps Movistar have unearthed something special with her. And it was good to see Sarah Gigante back as well, continuing her comeback, which has been successful in the European racing. But let's get into these news here, Tommy. The UCI rolled out the regulations, and I put out a reel earlier this week when I saw this, and I stuffed it up, said 40 millimeters in my thing, but everybody knew what I meant. And gee, were there some comments like just, the feedback on this, on how badly the UCI have got it. So we'll run through the rules that will be rolling out next year, January 1st. The first is the rim depth. So from January 1st, 2026, for mass start road races, road bikes will be limited to a maximum rim depth of 65 millimeter. Now, this one, that's actually pretty, I think that's a bit fine because no one's running deeper than 70 mils. So that one's not so bad.
Yeah, that's all right. And to be honest, any deeper than 65 is a little bit of overkill unless you're running it in a time trial. But obviously, this is just for a road race. The next one's a bit of a debacle, though, isn't it, mate? The handlebar move. Talk me through this. You're across this. I've just seen the outrage across the platforms, but this is...
Yeah, it's rubbish. It's really hard to sort of interpret as well. Everyone's interpreting it a different way as to where you measure this, and this is the bar width. So the UCI will enforce a minimum handlebar width of 400 mil or 40 centimeters outside to outside in road and cyclocross events, with a minimum width as measured from hood to hood of 320 millimeter. This is what it says on their website. The silly thing here is, first of all, that is just, where does that decision come from? What is the justification for this? I know you probably got to put a limit on it somewhere so no one's rolling around with 20 centimeter bars, but I don't understand where it's come from. And that is just so wide. 40 centimeters is so wide. And the biggest thing here is, and the real uproar comes from the women's professional peloton. The women's professional riders, most of them won't even have shoulders that measure to 40 centimeters. And there are even some professional teams in the Women's World Tour where I saw a team manager posted on Twitter, their entire team, none of their riders ride anything more than 38 centimeter bars. And, Neem Fisher-Back posted a funny story when it came out, and she had a measuring tape of her shoulders and it measured 32 centimeters. What does she do? She's got to ride these huge, wide mountain bike handlebars now. So bizarre decision, mate.
Yeah, bizarre. What a waste of resources, first and foremost. Out of everything, or, if you want to apply a blanket rule on, say, something like this, because they're looking at it as a safety aspect, for the UCI, just go pull your head out of the gutter and go have a look at the finish of every race and see what you can improve there. Go work with local stakeholders and organisers and race event organisers and and try and put your resources there to help them into, making sure their events are run more efficiently and safer as a result. So, I'm sick of events and races having to be reactive rather than proactive. And for the governing body to try and come out with something like this, you just throw a blanket rule on and say, nothing smaller than 32 centimeters or something like that with a case exemption process. And you'd have that figured out. So the idea, or maybe the scope behind this, it hasn't really, they haven't exactly gone and done a big data sample size of research and got that.
Yeah, like where's the justification?
This is safer. They've just decided that they're going to roll this out without any information or any real warning. And like you said, imagine for teams, mate, even smaller continental teams. Yeah, it may make for a very difficult process for them.
I'd like to see these rules when they are announced, whatever they are. I want to see a justification before them. So a nice little script that reads, in light of events that happened here, here, and here, or research that states this, this, and this, we've decided to change the bar width to this, and then maybe a trial period ending 3 months, and then they sort of find a middle ground there. But they've just gone, this is the rule from January 1st. Here you go. So I reckon, Tom, this will be a guaranteed walk back. They will adjust this rule before the end of the year because the women's teams and just smaller riders as well. What about Pozzovivo, the guy with the two worst looking elbows in the history of life? What's he going to do? He must be riding. His shoulders are he's got no collarbones left, the man. He's probably got 10 centimeter collarbones because he snapped them 5 times. What does he do? So I think they'll walk this back. We'll see that happen in the future. But the next one is funny, Tommy, because last week we were talking about that the Factor bike, and here we go. This new rule has just effectively killed this and a few other bikes in the pipeline.
Yeah, walk me through this one, mate. You're a little bit more across this one. What fork width road bikes will be capped at 115 millimeters at the front and 145 at the rear. So that's going to apply as well to track bikes.
That's right. This is for track and for road bikes. And I just sort of grabbed a snippet here. So 115 millimeters, that's how wide they can be. Like when you saw that Factor bike, how wide those forks were. They're huge, way wider than 115 mil. And then 145 mil at the rear. So the rear stays cannot be wider than 145 mil. And from 2026, these begin. And in track bikes, which this is coming to effect in 2027, so the teams and nations have a bit more time to fix their bikes. This rule completely ruins the Hope Lotus British track bike, which is that one that has the really extreme fork and rear stays directing the wind flow. Those rear stays on that bike are wider than 145. So, they've got 2 years effectively to redevelop that bike. And you might think it's not as simple as just bringing the rear stays into 144. That it disturbs the airflow. That's not what their models will be working with. So I wonder if the R&D departments of the nations in the track cycling world were even consulted before this rule was put out, let alone road racing teams.
Yeah, that's quite literally the nail. Have consulted before this has been pushed, and it just evidently they haven't, or there's nothing that's been released publicly. And I think that just sort of goes to the show that UCI at the moment on this. They're trying to walk to the beat of their own drum in trying to slow down the peloton. They want to try and slow them down without maybe restricting gears or having to change the parkour. Because as we know, with even the next thing that they've brought into with helmet protocols, where they're not letting people use the Aero TT style helmets that would be used in a time trial in the road race, that they're trying to slow down everybody. That's the prerogative I'm getting here. But I feel like these initiatives, when it comes from this end, it needs to be a little bit more of a rider-driven issue. I could see this coming across the board, that there would surely be some minimums for the forks and the handlebars as well. It comes from the riders, not coming from just the governing body slapping this down without really great cause of explanation or without reason.
Perhaps they should be. I wonder if they consulted the CPA about this. That would be interesting to know, or of course the Women's Cyclists Alliance. So it'd be interesting to see, what sort of happened there. The helmet one is strange. They haven't announced anything yet, but what is next reportedly on the UCI's radar is the Aero TT style helmets that Visma Lease bike have worn in fast road stages, and EF, those big visor, those disgusting looking ones. Bike Radar, which is it's some sort of source. They have claimed that their particular source that they know say the UCI is pushing for rules stating that helmets must have 3 to 4 vents minimum in the helmet. So, you know what I think a lot of these rules are for, and we've talked about the forks, and when we think about those forks on the bikes and the rear stays, they're extreme. They're trying to limit those extreme shapes on the bike, right? And same with the handlebars. They're trying to limit the Taco Vanderhorns and the Campanarts, making these tiny bars that come right in and really change the shape of what people think about when they think of a bicycle. And I reckon this is kind of like the old school crew in there saying, hey, we still want cycling to look like cycling, and we don't want it to look all weird and just go all aero style. And a bit like when Wimbledon says you must wear white, and then Nick Kyrgios comes out and wears a basketball jersey and you get fined. So I reckon there's a little bit of that. They're trying to protect the image of the sport as to what they say it should be, and it's wrong,
and also
really.
Also maybe the accessibility of it as well at a junior level. We don't want to see kids riding around with these sort of helmets at road races, do we? We don't want to see that. We want them to just roll around the safe, normal looking helmet. And that goes with the bars as well. The kids are all about riding narrow bars, so there is an element where this is applicable to that. And I can completely understand it from that side of things at a junior level. Much like having junior gearing, you could manage something like this, or it could be rolled out through all the nation's governing bodies, and you can manage it a little bit more that way. But the helmet, I think, to be honest, if that is next on the agenda, I will support that. I think that is something that is just clear, cut and dry. Have a time trial bike for a time trial helmet for a TT if you'd like, and go and grab that, because that's another product you've got to go buy and all that sort of jazz. But just keep it nice and safe and easy, and have a standard aero road lid for use.
You make a good point there. Now, one cycling that was it's been simmering in the news pretty much all year, and we've had people come out and say, yeah, they want to do this. They've been really bold with their plans. We want to start 2026, and we've got these teams on board, and it was really murky, and it's just been rejected so far. Escape Collective reported on this last week about one cycling. The UCI released the calendars for the 2026 Men's and Women's World Tour at its management committee meeting, I think, last week, and the committee was unanimous in declining to include one cycling in the 2026 Men's or Women's World Tour, and they stated the project, which has been developed by certain teams and organisers in collaboration with a sports investment fund, which is the Saudi investment fund, was deemed to be incompatible with the governance and regulatory framework of the UCI, as well as lacking sporting coherence. So that is a pretty, that's basically them saying one cycling is a pile of dog shit and there's no chance you're being in our game. So they're going to have to go back to the drawing board, one cycling, won't they?
Yeah, they're going to have to. But it sounds like they're going to, though. It definitely sounds like they're going to go back and try and salvage and reform what they have, and maybe try and approach it with a longer term view of this. We know maybe that some of the non-Eurocentric races were kind of a little bit more attracted to this idea, because, if you got onto the calendar, then all of a sudden you'd have some of the bigger name riders coming to your race. So, yeah, there's an element of life. And don't forget that UCI would look at this and with a bit of trepidation as well. They would be anxious into jumping into bed with this. And obviously, we just don't know the back players, mate, the back channels of the slush fund between the UCI, the ASO. Where's the money coming from? We know at the top of the food chain in the cycling world, you have the ASO. Yeah. So they, taking away or trying to challenge them, that's the idea of one cycling, so to speak. As far as that can occur, this it's a bit of a shame, to be honest, because I would like to. I'm a fan of the Live Golf, for example. I quite like it. I think it challenges the standard PGA that's been rolling around for many years, and it's made the PGA rethink and get better. And also, I think this had maybe the potential to push, push the UCI to really fight a little bit harder. Not just about him.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, they might just they might force them to sort of get on their toes a little bit, like how Wahoo really pushed Garmin to sort of stop sleeping at the wheel and try some product development. But unfortunately, Wahoo are taking over. So that's why we love FE Sports. And it was funny. I was listening to a podcast today, actually, Kick It Forward. They had I can't remember who they are, a special guest who's like a real sports nuffy, and they were talking about the Saudis' investment in many sports around the world. And, this investment fund, it has trillions of dollars. It's trillions of dollars. So they are just buying sports for fun and investing in so many different things to diversify away from just oil and all the things that they produce to get them all that money. And, their investment in trying to get into cycling is just like, it's a drop in the ocean, and the UCI can never compete with that sort of backing as well if it ever came a toe-for-toe money grab.
Well, it was interesting. Do you know how much that was actually projected, the cost for One Cycling to come in and say, we're going to do all this? Because I remember hearing about the actual number that was projected. And overall, it wasn't actually that much. And I believe there was an issue.
250 mil or something?
Yeah, bang on. And it was around that ballpark. I don't know exactly off the top of my head right now, but a lot of stakeholders who, were speaking to One Cycling, and they said, well, hold up. You've evaluated, and I believe they had one of the big four consultancy firms do the due diligence on this. And they said, you value cycling at $250 million as World Tour cycling or the tour or this element of it. And one of the guys, one of the richer owners of the teams, he just turned around and said, I'd pay $250 million right without One Cycling and try and run it myself. So there's a little bit of disparity between, the value, the worth, and like you said, it's a drop in the ocean. So I don't think there's going to be a lack of funds, but it's a lack of cohesion, isn't it? It's not like AFL, for example, where all the teams are owned by the AFL, all the government, from Gold Coast to Fremantle, they're all owned by the commission. So if you had that sort of element, then you would see the correct allocation of funds. But the licenses are all owned. And, that's the motto that the UCI have set up with at the moment, that they lease them, they make money off the leases rather than having actual control and trying to generate revenue from these teams.
Well, we'll see how it unfolds. I'm sure One Cycling will not be going away. Now, some transfer rumours that have, a few have evolved, and then some others have come to light recently. And one that has evolved is the rumour about Sam Welsford. Now, it seems that he is all but gone from Red Bull at the end of this season. Let's hope he can get a few more results by the season's end. And it was thought initially that Jayco were in the box seat. Jayco wanted him. The Australian team has made a huge move in the last 3 years to get all the big Australian stars back to the Aussie team. And it's something that we've been really, supportive of. I think it's a great, what they should be doing. But this week, it was the rumours starting to build up on Twitter and around the forums that Ineos are after Sam Welsford, and they apparently now are in the box seat ahead of Jayco, probably because of budget, because Jayco's budget is definitely wouldn't be as high as Ineos's. And, geez, that makes it interesting because, of course, for Sammy, I mean, I think he would perform well in both teams. But if you were Sam, Tom, and you had the pick of Ineos or Jayco, where would you go, mate, from a sporting point of view?
From a sporting point of view, straight away I'd be going to Jayco. Straight off the top of my head, all I can think of is that Jayco have a lead out. They've got Groenewegen, right-hand man, Reindeers, he's there. They've also got Luka Mezgec, Durbridge, Max Walscheid. They've got a bit of a core unit who, he would be pretty compatible with that as well. Durbridge, he's going to stay on, I believe. Walscheid, he might be hanging around. I understand that Dylan Groenewegen as well. I believe he is obviously he's out of contract and he's exploring opportunities of where to land next year as well. So from a sporting point of view, I think you jump into Jayco personally, and also mention Kell O'Brien, his best mate. Is at the team currently. And in contrast to Ineos, who have Connor Swift and Ben Swift, who's 37. They've got Tarling as well, but I can't think right off the top of my head who would be, that key lead-out guy. Who is the man? Who, that's not a bad nucleus of a sprint lead-out, but it's not as good as Jarko, in my opinion, who have really built up a good unit around the Groenewegen. And, they've taken Dylan to the Tour and they've won with the Tour last year, a stage. And I think they're right in there to do it again this year as well. And I believe Groenewegen is maybe half a foot out the door already.
Yes, I think Astana are looking at Groenewegen, and I guess we'll just wait and see. I'm sure we'll hear more of this as we head towards the Tour de France, because of course on August 1st is when transfers can be announced, and I'm sure we'll hear some more about Sammy and where he is at. Remco and the Ineos rumour that he is also on route to there, along with Specialized. At the moment, there's been a bit of a stall in this, from what I'm reading, and the stall is the Total Direct Energies merger with Ineos. I think that's still being worked through, and that deal has to get done for Remco to be there, because the money that is coming with Total's injection with Ineos, that is the money that is really needed to get Remco over. Otherwise, I don't think Ineos can afford him, because they'll have to buy out his current contract. So that's a watch, and
it's a watch, isn't it? It's a watch, and it's a wait and see. It's really affecting, though, Ineos's ability to be able to sign riders for this season, though. It's jeopardising their plans and the directors' plans currently, from what I understand, to land riders, even like Welsford as well, and land riders like Welsford and then say, hey, yep, we'll bring another, we'll get you, and then we'll get a lead-out guy for you as well. And that all those sort of plans are sort of the next domino to fall. And this happened almost a year ago when, in the GC market, everyone was waiting to see if Remco did make the move, and it never did. And then when it was finally clear that it didn't happen, all these other GC guys just got signed up quickly. It was a space race. So, it's fascinating. He's the first big domino to fall in this transfer market.
He is. Now, this one is the new one I've heard of. Just yesterday came to light. Cycling, some fucking shit website reported this, but a website's got reputable journalists attached to it. Jasper Stuyven.
Not like this show, hey?
Hey, we've actually broke some pretty good news, actually, if we don't say so ourselves. But Stuyven, he spent 12 years at Lidl Trek, and the rumour is that he is looking to leave and perhaps get full leadership elsewhere with the likes of Mads, and he probably sees the writing on the wall with young Thibaut Nice coming through as well. Soudal Quickstep desperately need a classics hitman, a front man, and they are the ones really looking at Stuyven and acquiring him. So that'll be an interesting move, and one I'd like to see, because Stuyven is he's the ultimate teammate when he's asked to be so, but I feel like he's got a few really good results in him, a couple of podiums on the big stage, still ahead in his career.
You're always paying for a rider for what they can do for you. And I don't know if he has. I'm glad to be proven wrong, but Stuyven, I think his best years might be behind him. But in terms of as a leader, but also in terms of as a helper, he would be sensational. He's a rider who understands positioning, pivotal points in the race as well, of when to apply pressure and when not to. So, he was a huge asset to Mads Pedersen throughout the classics. But like you said, mate, he's sort of down the pecking order at Lidl Trek, isn't he, now at the moment? So he the question's asked, and this is where a rider maybe of his stature, if he's not getting a ride in the team as, say, a road captain, then he goes, well, I want to go to the Tour. I'm a rider who's gone to the Tour for the last 10 years, and now I'm not going to the Tour? What's going on? I'm going to look around. Maybe there's a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, I think this is where Lidl Trek need to get out the checkbook. They need to get out the checkbook and throw the Mikhail Kwiatkowski vanity money like they did back in 2012. Ineos secured him while he was world champion from Quickstep. They need to throw that money at him and say, hey, I know you want to go to Soudal and try for yourself, but, here's some money, just stick with us. We'll give you these opportunities, and you work for us, and you could be you'll probably be more heralded as a teammate and as a semi sort of co-leader now and again than you would if you went to Soudal and you end up riding by yourself because Lampert's finishing 80th in Flanders and he's your second best teammate. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. And quickly also Jack Haig, Tommy, there's a few rumours around the great man moving from Bahrain.
Yes, I believe he might be on the move from Bahrain. I think his contract's coming up. And we've seen, Lenny Martinez, he's come in, ushered maybe a fresh wave of young blood into that team. Jayco or Premier Tech are the potential options for Haig. And I think either would be a good match. I think either would suit the Australian pretty well. So wait and see where he lands. There's no animosity with that, I think, as well. I think both parties would turn around and say, we got the best out of each other. We'll see you down at the next race. So nothing to see there, but I hope Haig puts in a huge Tour de France and really consolidates his worth because he's a classy bike rider. He's a great bike rider. He's experienced. He's been on the Grand Tour at the Vuelta before, so he knows what it's like to be at the pointy end.
Well said. FE Sports, they are, of course, one of our great sponsors this year for the second year running. Pirelli have just released a new tyre designed for all-day riding, endurance riding, just your tyre you stick on, and you don't have to worry about if you're doing your long Ks, and it is the Cinturato Evo TLR. So make sure you get some of those on your bike if you're into that long-distance riding or you just want a tyre that's ain't going to get any punches throughout the winter, Tommy. With our Dauphine chat to race tyres only for the great man here.
Yeah, because you're only doing 30K loops, mate.
I'm P0 RS for me. Super fast. But Dauphine chat coming up right after this break. Tommy, the Criterium of the Dauphine wrapped up on Sunday night, and we got the first look all year. Only had to wait till fucking June before we saw it. The big three going head to head. Pogacar, Vingegaard, and Remco Evenepoel ahead of the Tour de France. Pogacar did it easy in the end. I think that's probably the easiest way to say it. He won easy. He won the mountain stages, no worries. He kind of stuffed up his pacing, I think, for the TT, but when they got to the real proper stages that'll influence the Tour de France, he was able to dispatch Vingegaard really easily. And I think it surprised all of us. I think we were all expecting on those three mountain tests that Vingegaard would be a little bit closer to Pogacar, but it seems like he's got some work to do.
Yeah, it certainly does, doesn't it? I think honestly, Pog is obviously going exceptionally well. He's found the form that he needs for the Tour de France. I think the Great Dane, Jonas Vingegaard, maybe biding his time a little bit. Maybe he wants to just go there and potentially the climb that he was dropped on. I don't know the numbers, but I was reading it, trying to read a little bit into it in terms of the watts per kilo, and this is not my avenue by any means. But he's not where he should be, Jonas. He's done better performances watt per kilo wise for that sort of climb over the 20-minute effort at previous Dauphines, where he's gone on to win the Tour de France.
And that was the first climb they did, the first climb where Pogacar won by over a minute or put a minute into Jonas. Jonas actually did a slower time on that third last mountain stage than he did back in 2023 when they raced it last time. And Pogacar, I think he did his like a minute and a half quicker. He's like, it just gives you an example of Pogacar has gone up another level, and I think Jonas has just stagnated.
Yeah, maybe stagnated or potentially, obviously, we know there's 2-3 weeks before the Tour de France. And we know that the Tour de France this year, it is back-ended. And the climbs at this year's Tour de France, they are longer. So that was a 20-minute climb that Pog went on an absolute tear. But to take a minute was concerning. I think if Pogacar was only able to eke out 30 seconds of Jonas, then you could say Jonas has had a bad day. And that's, maybe he's just not feeling it, that 1 or 2% missing on that sort of climb. But to lose a minute was concerning. I just hope that Jonas can turn around and say, look, I've been training for hour-long climbs, and that's what's at the Tour de France, and that's where the real challenge is going to be this year, not a 20-minute climb, because everything at the Tour is over sort of that 13-kilometre length. So if not right up to the 20-kilometre length for these HCs and ones that are going to be featuring on the summit finishes of this year's Tour. So I think he's put his eggs in that basket, I hope. And I hope that we do see a good battle. I hope it isn't just a dominant Pog, but the form we saw suggests otherwise, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think what concerned me the most was he had no snap to respond to Pogacar once Pogacar went. Well, yeah, once Pogacar went, when he attacked, he attacked for maybe about 20 seconds, and then Vingegaard was off the wheel. So yeah, that just shows that perhaps Vingegaard was on his limit well up until the point where Pogacar went, but not a good sign. And yeah, I mean, as much as I do love Pogacar, and I think he's going to win the Tour. I still want to see a close battle between Vingegaard. I want to see Vingegaard take some stages on Pog. I want to see him break Pog, because it's just exciting to see, the best get challenged. But at the moment, we're not seeing that at all. And even Remco Evenepoel as well. I think he was, despite winning the TT as we'd expect as the champion, he'd probably be disappointed with finishing behind Florian Lipowitz from Red Bull, finishing in fourth place in the end, because he would have expected, I think, that long climbing to be a little bit better at this point ahead of the Tour.
Yeah, no, you're on the money, mate. On the money. Geez, it was impressive, wasn't it? Hey, Florian Lipowitz, the German. You're talking the big three, mate. Get Remco out of there. Throw Lipowitz in there. He's the man now. So
should Roglic be? Should he be worried about being the leader in the GC? Because Lipowitz has already come out because he's been asked by the media already. Could you be the leader in the Tour? And he said, no, I'm all in to help Roglic. But I reckon Red Bull should be just cotton wool Lipowitz, because Roglic, we know he is a liability in Grand Tours. I think he's won 3 out of the last 4 he's finished, but he's actually finished 3 out of the last 10 that he started.
The first 9 days of the Tour de France are difficult. They are very difficult. We've got tight, difficult finishes through, obviously Normandy and up north in northern France, and then across to Bretagne. Very difficult finishes and difficult days where you could see genuine crosswinds. You got to Roglic. I don't know how he's traveling. No one knows how he's traveling other than himself after pulling out of the Giro, which is, intriguing in itself. Lipowitz, this is a line in the sand. He can feed that line to the media that he's there for Roglic. Great. He gets to fly under the radar. He gets to just not, have the attention of the press. He's told us, nah, I'm not going there. I'm helping my man. Nah, he will be there as the second option. He is going to make sure that they can get at the top 10 at worst, because I think he could do that if he comes to the Tour de France and rides GC, and you've got to come away with something, and if Roglic has a bad day because his form's not there and he goes over his limit and he just capitulates in the third or second week, even the first week, like you're so pragmatic about, it's fascinating. You've got to have a two-prong approach when you don't have a Tadej Pogacar. And I think that they went into the Giro with that option. Jai Hindley was still the man. He was going to maybe ride for Roglic in the third week if he was 2 minutes up. But Jai, he was well within his right, I believe, to have another opportunity himself. And I think Florian Lipowitz has earned that.
Well, it's interesting with Pogacar. He really worked very hard to not win that final stage of the Dauphine, because he's sitting on 99 pro victories. And I'm sure he loves that theatre. He wants to get the 100th victory at the Tour.
Surely not. The arrogance.
Yeah.
The arrogance. That is terrible.
The theatre. He loves the theatre.
You love the theatre, my friend. That is just absolute. I'm not a fan of that one little bit. If you can win in pro soccer, you win. It is hard to win, and he should know that better than anybody. Oh, I don't know about that. That doesn't bode well with me.
Well, how about this? Imagine if you're the greatest cyclist ever and you can pretty much just win whenever you like, right? And you're Tommy McCracken, you've got 99 crit wins. So 99 wins here in WA. You've got a Peel District Club crit coming up in 1 week. And then on the week after that, you've got the 100th edition of the Collie Donnybrook Handicap. And you're basically guaranteed to win.
You win them both.
You would not win that club.
Do not take it for granted. You fall off your bike and you bingle and you do not take it for granted. No.
I'd throw the stick right in my spokes, mate. Make sure I get the 100th at Collie Donnybrook.
Oh, you'd be a director's worst nightmare, wouldn't you? You'd be the absolute pit. Oh, you'd be the domestic. Jethro, come back for bottles, and be like, no. I know better. No, mate, absolutely.
I'm the leader, mate, like the golf video. Now, the Aussies, Tommy, just call me Mr. Parr. The Aussies, actually some bad news. And this is actually quite concerning because Michael Matthews is out of the Tour de France after being diagnosed with a pulmonary embolism whilst at this training camp with Jayco. This is a pretty serious, it could be a career-threatening issue because basically, a pulmonary embolism is a blockage of one of the pulmonary arteries in your lungs, usually caused by a blood clot that travels from somewhere else in the body, usually the legs, sort of via, it's kind of similar to deep vein thrombosis. And the blockage restricts blood flow to the lungs, causing complications. And as the body heals from this, and when it gets treatment, it can cause scarring on the lungs. And the scarring can actually in some bad cases, it can restrict the aerobic capacity or the lung capacity, which in case in point would sort of restrict your aerobic capacity as athletes. And it's done that to other athletes who've suffered this issue. So it's really not good news for Matthews, considering his age, and he might only have maybe 4 years left if he wants to continue. And I think it's only the 3rd time he's missed out on the Tour de France in the last 11 years. So really bad timing.
Yeah, there's never a good time for this, is there? When you're a professional athlete or even off the bike. So we wish him the best of luck. He leaves a pretty big hole in the team for Jayco Alula to go to the Tour de France. And like I'm saying, the first 9 days really suit him as a bike racer. So, we wish him the best of luck and that he can bounce back. And, he's had such a sensational career. He's been such a servant to Australian cycling, particularly going to all those world championships and applying his trade and the respect he gives. And he doesn't take it for granted, does he, mate? He would win those crits and he'd win the second one at 101. That's who he is. So. Yeah. But across the, obviously still racing at the moment. Aussie wrap-up, mate. Benny O'Connor going very nicely. Geez, I tell you what, stage 1 of the Tour of Swiss, O'Connor, fresh off a big block of altitude down at Sierra Nevada, got into the breakaway on stage 1, a 30-man break. It had Durbridge and Felix Reinhardt, I believe. Durbridge, we're talking about Aussie rap, put himself on the front. The call would have come through and said, Luke, you've got to ride the front, mate. Here we go. The gap got a couple of minutes, and Durbridge just rode himself to this final climb. That was about 20 kilometres from the finish. He and Felix kept the break at bay, but Durbridge in the Aussie champs, the jersey in pristine condition. It was splendid amongst the rain at Swiss, and he just rode himself into the biggest hole. It was great to see. It was impressive. And now O'Connor, he's 2 minutes ahead of Almeida. And he's 5th overall, so he's put himself in a really good position because he's never won a World Tour race, a week-long stage race, and this would be a really good opportunity.
Wow, they've done really well, and they really pulled Almeida's pants down there because Almeida was this real big competition in the mountains.
UAE, they had Felix Grossschachner in the break, and there's a lot of debacle going on at the moment. They're like, are you seriously rolling the dice with Felix Grossschachner as your man for the GC? And by all reports, that's what they're sort of leaning towards. So the parcours for Tour of Swiss maybe isn't as long as what you've seen at the Criterium de Dauphine in terms of these longer climbs or even 20, 30-minute climbs, but it's hard. It's bloody difficult. Don't get me wrong. And Romain Gregoire, who took the stage in the GC, he himself could, challenge for the overall as a bit more of a puncher sort of rider. But yeah, it's a fascinating miss by Almeida in UAE. I'm not going to get drawn into this UAE chat and Tour of Swiss, but it's a very curious scenario, and it makes the question, why is Almeida at UAE still when they do not want to ride for him?
Very strange indeed. And of course, on the women's side as well, Sarah Gigante, she continued a great comeback to Euro racing. She was 12th on GC at the Tour of Swiss Femmes, and she just missed out on the mountains jersey. She wore it for 3 days in a row, I think, on that final stage, missing out by just 2 points, but looking good for her ahead of the Tour de France Femmes late July. That'll be the pod, everyone. Thank you for listening. We've got our Tour de France preview coming up next week as well. We'll unpack the whole thing. We might be able to do it maybe in 2 weeks' time.
We could have recorded.
We
could have recorded our presentation on Saturday, mate.
Yeah,
we could have just pumped that out and then hit the golf course.
So maybe the week after that, we'll do Tour de France preview just before, a week before the tour. We'll do that. But Tommy, what are you doing? You're off to the driving range, bit of practice?
No, mate. I got to apply my trade a little bit. I got a little bit more work here, mate. I don't need to use the driver, mate. I outdrive you with my 4-iron, mate. So you're back in your lane. But you didn't even put the scorecard up on the reel, did you? Did you?
What did I shoot?
Oh,